Kia ora koutou, welcome to South
Scott.
Pacific Muscle. Tonight we have got a guest who's locked away in a hotel in Auckland, unfortunately, but on a positive note, we're getting him back in New Zealand. So one of the three Mikes, we've got Mike Debenham. Welcome along, Mike Debenham.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having us on.
No worries. Hey, look, before we kick off into it, how's the whole isolation thing treating you, man? You're out pretty soon, I hear?
Yeah, we get out on Tuesday, so I've been in here almost 2 weeks. So it's actually, to be honest, we're in the Grand Mercure in the middle of Auckland, and you couldn't really ask it to be any better, to be honest. It's the food's reasonable. I wouldn't say it's fantastic, but it's fine. The rooms are very, very comfortable. If I was up here for a weekend, it would be definitely a nice place to be staying. Just been locked up for 2 weeks is a little bit.
Yeah.
It wears a little bit thin.
So how's the COVID test? Is that uncomfortable? They're doing the nasal swab for you?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we've done a couple of the nasal swabs. I won't give you a wee scan around the room because my wife's lying in bed watching TV. She went out to shower. She's having showers at like 4:30 in the afternoon and getting into her pajamas at 4:30 in the afternoon, which isn't bad considering we're not getting out of bed about last 8. So yeah, but no, the rooms are very comfortable, much more comfortable than the swabs, that's for sure. But I did actually have a swab when I was in Australia back about a month ago, so I have experienced it before.
Oh, God. Well, at least you'll be refreshed after all that sleep, and when you hit the ground in Christchurch, you'll hit the ground running.
Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, mate, yeah. Hey, look, for those that haven't followed your career, I know a bit about it because I was fortunate enough to spend some time training in your gym down at World Gym down in Christchurch, which is a fantastic gym, had a great vibe. And I know you sort of started off as a league player, quite a handy league player, I believe. So do you want to give us a bit of a rundown of your sporting history and how you got into bodybuilding and then a bit of chronological order of some of the competing that you've done over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. So I sort of first started, I suppose, doing a bit of training with weights when I was about 14 or 15. And I actually just started off with one of my really good friends, Tony Tibbetts, who was my captain of my league team at the time. And I wasn't too bad at league. I was pretty handy, but I was small. Yep. So my biggest thing was I just wanted to put more weight on so I wasn't getting banged around by some of the big island boys as much, to be honest. And then I suppose that then it sort of progressed because I was in a very good rugby league team as well. So we were always in grand finals and so forth. So very competitive. And then I just started to enjoy probably doing things at my own pace and relying on myself for success, not necessarily a team.
Yep.
I then started deciding that I wanted to jump up on stage. So I actually went to a very well-known Christchurch multiple Mr. New Zealand and told him I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I won't use his name. And said, I'd like to look like one of like those guys over there. And I think I pointed to a couple of guys that were probably about 90 kilos that I thought looked massive. And he actually laughed at me and said, you'll never look like that. So that's the reason I won't use his name. But Can we just say that guys like that are fucking wankers? Because I think that's the most arrogant, shitty thing to say to anyone that's got because anyone with a hope and a dream and a big set of fucking balls will get there. Yeah, look, I think eventually, as we get down the story, I think he probably ate his words. He actually ate his words after the first competition because another a guy in the gym, a guy called Les Millen, who was my first coach and someone who I still keep in contact with, even though I was only 18, and me and Les still talk on Facebook and all that sort of stuff. He took me on. And he was actually at the time dating, this is a few names going back from the past, but he was actually dating Vern Worrell at the time, which was Anne Polachek's daughter. So there's Anne Polachek was an ex-Miss New Zealand. Vern was a junior Miss New Zealand. I believe she won. So Les took me on, and from that, my first competition, I actually beat out the then teenage Mr. New Zealand, Damien Porter. So so that was sort of my first time on stage, and everyone was saying, don't expect too much. Damien Porter's going to be there. Damien Porter, okay. So I didn't expect anything. I ended up coming away with the win. And that particular trainer that told me that I was never going to get there was then interviewed because it was his competition that he was running, and all of a sudden I had a big future in front of me. So, so I got named in the paper as someone that was up and coming and having a big future. So, so that was sort of my kickoff, and that was back in 1993. So then, so 93, I competed again in 94. So I won the South Islands that year, and then went to the Nationals. I think I got about 6th at the Nationals in 93. And I'm pretty sure Mike Kingsnorth was at the Nationals as well, which of course me and Mike are very, very good mates.
Yeah.
And then 94, I competed again, defended my junior title, went to the Nationals, got 3rd at the Nationals, which I was very, very happy with because I was up against some big names. And back then, I was very green in my approach to bodybuilding. And then I think, things just sort of went from there. And my next step was to move into, back then it was, you did one class. So you did juniors, and then you got to, if you felt like you did all right, you go to novices, and then go to open. None of this, I'm going to go to a show and do juniors, novice, and open, walk away with 3 trophies. It was like you had your one shot on stage, and that was it. You gave it a good old crack. So my goal at that point was not to walk up on stage in the novice class until I felt that I was good enough to be an open athlete.
Yep.
So 1997 was my next time up on stage, and that's when actually me and Mike competed against each other.
I can attest to that. You were good enough to be in the open, because you actually won the overall for that, didn't you?
I ended up winning the overalls. So I won the novice heavyweights, and then they put me in the overalls, which was a little bit, they didn't normally do that. And I was up against actually Mark Anderson and Paul Wood. And I actually beat those guys to win the overall South Islands.
Thank you for mentioning that name, Paul Wood. I was trying to remember his name the other day, because that guy used to come in like, he was just like cement with veins on.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was miles ahead of his time, and just a phenomenal, like just brick hard. And I always remember he was a standard that I used to look at, because
conditioning was off the hook.
Yeah, because the 97 show, funnily enough, was Mike and my first show, the South Islands. And I've told the story before, but I went to the South Islands after seeing about 4 or 5 shows in North Island, convinced I was going to win in the novices, and came 6th in my class.
Well, I think we seemed quietly and down the South Island just go about our business. I think, and we had some amazing people down the South Island through that early mid-90s, and and a couple of those still, Steve Lynch is still a very, very good friend of mine. And he became one of my mentors, and I think he spent some time down Dunedin, down at the gyms down there. We had that Powdone, that's right. We had Vaughan Patterson, who again became a very, very good friend. So around that time I became good friends with Dave Smith as well. So I'm going to be really honest, around that mid-90s and that late 90s, when I suppose I started to come into my own, because after 97 I also won the New Zealand novice heavyweight title, and then that's when I went into the opens and started doing very well. But I had some really good people around me, and I put a lot of my success down to the fact that the people I had around me.
Yeah, it was a real solid era, and I mean, even was it who was the guy, Flynn, that was in the same? Yeah,
Jamie Flynn. Because at that point, and you remember this because you were at that gym, we had I had World Gym Christchurch at the time. We had
was it Matt?
Big Matt Ashworth. Yep. So Big Matt Ashworth worked for me. We had Carmen Cotter, who was was the only pro and female pro in the country, and she got 2nd at the Gentana. So her first outing was a really big entrance. We had Dave Smith training there. We had Lisa Masson training there. Masson training there. We had Vaughan Patterson. We had Steve Lynch. You and Greg, when he was down in town, would always train there. So we had some phenomenal. We had Jamie Flynn. We had Daniel Hibbs. We had, and they were all at World Gym, and half those names I mentioned either worked for me or were members of my gym. So we had an amazing atmosphere. Amazing atmosphere.
So can I just tell you my recollections of that show, because Nathan said that when he turned up, he was sure he was going to win. When I turned up and got backstage, I don't know if I was looking at the other athletes. I might have just been looking at you, but I went, oh my God, what am I doing here? Can I just leave? Do I have to go out on stage? Can I just sneak out the back? And there was 10 guys in our class, and I was sure I was coming last, and I ended up coming second to you. It was a fairly close thing, you know, but coming second to you, you went out and won the overall. So if it was another year, I might have snuck away with that title. So, but 2 years later, came back to win that title. But that's luck of the draw, because there was only 4 in it then, and they were all rubbish. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that, but relatively speaking, anybody could have walked in and won that. So, and the year in between was Matt Ashworth. So, you know, it's just kind of luck of the draw. But that, I just remember looking at you, just going, "Oh my God, is that what I'm up against?"
Well, I was only weighing about 83 kilos back then.
I was 102, but I'm 6'2". So,
but I think back in those days, I mean, not that I haven't dieted hard since, but I just had probably, I suppose back then it was you were purely reliant on your hard work and nothing else. And so you just had to come. Like for me, not being a big guy and a big stature guy. I mean, I've got quite small joints. I just had to come in absolutely peeled. And I think through those couple of years and that late 90s, that was always probably my strength. Was I would come in, you know, proportionate wise. I know I was, you know, I suppose I had a nice shape, but I was never the biggest guy, but I just made sure I bought everything in really tight and symmetrical. And I think that's probably what held me over in my early amateur years, was just that, okay, he's got shape and he's conditioned. I was never ever the biggest on stage. And I think for a lot of people, that sort of also at that time was saying to people, you don't have to be the biggest guy on stage. You just got to bring it all together.
I remember you doing the splits in your posing routine.
I was just going to say that the splits and the Terminator routine.
Actually, I put a photo of it. Yeah. I actually put a photo of doing that splits on Instagram the other day.
Yeah.
And you know, the one routine I can't find anywhere on DVD or video is that Terminator routine, which really pisses me off, because that was, I reckon, still probably the best routine I've ever done. And I cannot. It's the one. It's the one video I cannot find anywhere. I think over the years I linked out VHSs to people, and they've never returned. And so I'm a bit gutted that I don't have that one on video.
So
I'm just throwing it out there. If anyone's got that routine on video, get hold of me.
And if anyone hasn't, Mike, what about 221? Someone brings back the Terminator routine.
I just don't think I'd be too good with the splits anymore.
Oh, jeepers. Yeah, no, that was something, you know, a memory. You know, I've got a bunch of memories that I remember, and that and come and caught a rear lat spread with some of the memories from that show that stuck in my head for, you know, what a show. So, so post that, where'd you go from there?
So post that, so we were talking around that 97, 98, I came back. So I did, in 98, I did the Pan Pacifics as a novice in my last year, as a novice, because you get that 12 months to compete as a novice. I know at that show, myself and Graham Caldwell were training together. So me and Graham went up to do that show together. Graham actually beat Justin Reese, big Kiwi.
Yep.
I'm trying to actually think of the judge's name. He was trying to encourage me to go into the Opens, but I think back then, like I said, you had that, no, I want to work the ranks, I want to do things right. So that was my last shot as a novice. I won the Pan Pacific heavyweight title. I think I bet Philly Niku for that title, actually. And then later that year went into the Opens, obviously won the South Island title again, won the light heavy Mr. New Zealand title. We'll carry on, moving on from that story. So I won the 98 Mr. New Zealand title, won the 99 Taranaki heavyweights, won the 2000 overall heavyweight and overall Mr. New Zealand, and then sort of had a bit of a break for a little while, and actually went off and did some stuff with NABA. And that was a bit of because there was some disagreements to the way things were getting run with the NZFBB back then, through it with some of the judges and what they were trying to achieve with the IFBB, I suppose. And NABA did the 2003 Mr. Universe. I got 6th there. 2005 did the Worlds, got 5th at the Worlds, and that was what I think now is, because it's changed a bit since I've left New Zealand, but I think that was NABA New Zealand. They had the breakaway, and and then I got approached actually by the IFBB to start running the South Island title champs in 2005, and then I had that period from 2005 through to 2010 or 2011 until me and my wife moved to Australia, where I was actually running the IFBB in the South Island.
Yep.
And yeah, that's when there was a few times where I was guest posing, judging, running the show, and trying to manage about 10 people on stage as well. So she was a pretty hectic old time.
Yeah,
but I always excuse myself from the judging table when my athletes were on stage. So
well, when you got 15 athletes in the show, you can't have been judging too many classes.
No. In fact, when I was running the South Island champs, most of the time I didn't actually sit on the judging table. I opted to run the backstage for that very reason. I was just too close to too many of the athletes. So you generally find me running around the backstage, making sure everything was running on time.
2007 was when we came back in the country in 2006. My wife wanted to compete again, and she went to the University of Canberra, and we were up in Christchurch, and I think we were just watching the show, and I saw you across the way, and I recognised you. I won't remember me, but I remember you coming over and having a quick chat and telling me you were guest posing and judging and all these clients in the show and running the show and that sort of thing. And I was just super impressed with how relaxed you were, because if I was doing all of that, my head would be exploding.
I'd actually tell you, 2007, what happened, I wasn't going to compete. I was going to do the Taranakis in 2007 to qualify for the 2008 Nationals. You know, the Taranakis are always behind the Nationals by 1 week. That's the first qualifier. And Paul Wood was competing. And this is the one time that I actually I didn't win my class. And Paul was having a bit of a moan, the fact that he was going to be getting up on stage by himself and there was no one to compete against and putting all that effort as a heavyweight open. I get that. And I actually decided 2 days before the show, and I was 5 weeks out from the Taranakis. I said, fuck it, I'll just chuck some tan on and jump up on stage. And I knew Deb was going to beat me because he always comes in peeled. And if you're going to beat Paul Wood, you've got to be in shape. And I was out of shape, and we had a great time on stage. We really did. And he deserved every win. And I had no problems with getting second to him, but fuck, I hated it. Anyway, I think about 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, I'd gone and spent $600 on a spin bike, put it in the lounge, and I rang up I think it was Mark Stewart at the time, and said, I'm not judging at the Nationals because I'm competing. And I went, I've got to beat Paul Wood again, which I ended up winning the Nationals in 2007.
So that year that we went to the universe, Paul Wood and Mark Anderson both went to the universe with us.
That's right. They went to the universe afterwards because Paul
came 6th or so at the universe. Mark won his class.
Yep.
Annette Parnham won her class.
Yep.
Yeah. And Delane won her class as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was with Neverland.
So at that point, when I won the Nationals in 2007, which I had done things quite differently as far as preparation, and the last 3 years of my life prior to that was very different. I came in a lot lighter and a lot smaller, but I was very happy with what I was able to achieve in that state. And then it was my partner at the time. I had the options of going to the World Champs in 2008, or asking for my pro card. And of course, Nathan, as you know, the pro card has always been something that I've always wanted. Yeah. So I had to make a few hard decisions, and I decided to take the pro card and then move into the pro ranks. So that was the end of the amateurs for me. And then back to the bottom of the pile, getting get my ass kicked.
Yeah. How did you deal with that? Because we talked about that with a few athletes on here, but also I had that conversation with a guy that entered his wedding last week about turning pro and, having been the top for the last couple of years, and then all of a sudden you're in the big time.
I actually thought about this when I knew I was going to talk to you, and I think if anyone that's in that situation, which is looking to come in to become a pro and wanting to become a pro, if they don't listen to anything else that we've got to say tonight, I reckon this is probably the thing that I think they should really think about. Is if I had my time over again with the way the IFBB Pro League has changed. When I talk about the IFBB Pro League, we're talking about NPC worldwide as well. Yeah. So the way that's changed now, that as an amateur, you can go to any show in the world that you want. You don't have to get anyone's permission. You don't have to ask for Mo's permission. You don't have to ask for anyone's permission. You just get on a plane. Well, when you can get on a plane, and you can go. You can go to America and compete. You can go to Australia and compete. You can go to Europe and compete. if you're chasing your pro card, what you have to realize is that you're pretty much putting, for 99.99999% of us, you are putting your bodybuilding career to sleep, to death.
Yeah.
And the reality is there is a very few people that will ever get their pro card that will make it. Becoming a pro makes life a shitload harder because we're so limited in the competitions we can do.
Yep.
If you're already pushing the ante, you're pushing the limits of your health and what you morally can handle, to just scrape in by the skin of your teeth to win a national title, to get a pro card, I would seriously think twice and go, if I really love bodybuilding and I love competing, just keep hitting the amateur stuff.
Yep.
Because you do go to the bottom of the pile, and all of a sudden a show, my first two pro shows, I tore up $25,000.
Yeah.
To go to America and do 2 shows.
Yep.
And then I was at the bottom of the barrel, like I wasn't doing too bad. Like I got in a comparison in my first pro show with Robert Petrewski, or whatever you pronounce his name, which is the Polish 2-time world champion. He got 15th and I was in the 16th, because once you get 16th, everyone's 16th. But so I know that I was in that middle ground.
Yep.
But the reality is, I love competing and I love coming up on stage and doing the Terminator routines and the splits and all that sort of stuff, and entertaining my friends and my family and hearing that crowd go nuts. But when you turn pro and you put all your money and effort into going overseas and competing, and you walk out on stage and there's not one being person out there who knows who you are, maybe apart from a partner that's traveled with you, it's actually pretty lonely. And unless you have that, and I think this is especially in bodybuilding, I think there's more opportunity with men's physique and even classic, and definitely in bikini. But when you're talking about bodybuilding, it's a hard gig, and the shows are so far and few between. So I sort of do say to someone that's been throwing everything at trying to get their pro card for the last 5 or 6 years, just think twice about what you want from the sport.
Yeah,
because
I think someone made the comment to me, for most people getting a pro card is the end of your bodybuilding career.
I think Michael Kingsnorth might have said that to you, actually. Yeah. So we've had that conversation a lot, and it is for most people. Yeah. I mean, how many pro cards have been given out, and how many? If we look at men's bodybuilding in New Zealand, and say since 2000, how many pro cards have been given out, and how many people have gone to America and competed?
Yeah.
In bodybuilding, I'm not talking about the bikini or the figure or the men's physique or anything, but I'm talking about men's bodybuilding. Yeah. Because also, if you look at the schedule, men's bodybuilding schedule is this big. Women's bikini is this big. You can go to the States, which is when we were over there in November for Mike and Kate's show, there were 2 bikini competitions in California in the same weekend.
Wow.
So you can go there as a bikini athlete and spend 4 weeks there and do 4 or 5 shows. Easy. Yeah. But that's not going to happen as a bodybuilder. So I suppose if you look from 2000 onwards, all the people that have got their pro cards, how many men have actually gone to America and competed in bodybuilding? It's not many, because most people get their card and then don't use it.
Yeah, I think for some people, maybe getting the card is like, their swan song, and they're like, I want to get a card, I want to go and do a pro show, and then I'll hang my boots up.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I think that, everyone's different. So that's why I just think you have to ask yourself what it is, because, I'm 46 years old now. So, and, I've got a crook shoulder that just doesn't allow me to train the way I would have trained when I was competing.
Yeah.
Now, if I was an amateur and my shoulder was still holding together, I'd be enjoying my bodybuilding career by trying to do Masters champs and I'd still do the old Open show, but I'd go and do some Masters world champs. And also now you've got all the Arnolds that you could go to and all these other shows that you can go to. When I was trying to get my pro card, which I wasn't even trying to get it in 2007, I was trying to get it in 2000.
Yeah.
None of that was available to us. Yeah. So I just think there's so much more available for the amateur athlete to see the world, stand on big stages without necessarily having to end their career, like you said, by getting their pro card and then finding themselves at the bottom of the barrel and then going, do I want to spend $20,000 to get 20th?
Yeah, and I think that's probably, the fact that we get a pro show here once every 2 years, maybe
Yep.
one in Australia.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's just the travel and accommodation,
Yep.
etc. You're looking at a big chunk of change that is out of the average person's league before you even worry about the bodybuilding competition.
Yeah,
Do you think
absolutely.
do you think it's a little bit around marketing for some people? I mean, trainers,
Look,
coaches.
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think that, and if that's if that's part of what you're wanting to achieve, I think that's great. I suppose this is probably where things have changed now. We're going to sound like an old bastard, because before social media was around, we crossed paths at shows. If we did well enough, we might be able to run down and go to the news agency and pick up a magazine and find a little photo this big of us and the results for the South Island bodybuilding champs. So that's where things have probably changed, because you see a lot of people come into the bodybuilding these days, and these days, what I have noticed, they do quite well, especially some of the ones that do really well. They do really well. They sort of set themselves up, and then they sort of drift off, and they just got straight off into their coaching and bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Rugby players, a good rugby player is going to play rugby from when they're 5 through to when they're 32 years old. So they're going to have a 25-year span of playing rugby. I think people that probably like us, who are very, very passionate, we're going to do the same. Where I think you see a lot more people these days in it. They go hard and fast for 2 or 3 years, and then they use that as leverage for their PT business or whatever.
Yeah. So let's talk pro career, Mike, because you've been on some stages with some pretty phenomenal athletes, and you've done some pretty cool shows. You want to tell us about that?
Yep. So I did my first show was the 2009 Tampa Pro, which was a pretty hefty one to jump in as my first one. I was up against some big names. I mean, Dennis James won that show. It was Ben Pekalski's first show. It was Fuad. He got second, I think, and Ben Pekalski got third. There was Big Eddie Abu was in there. Biggie Smalls. There was some, there was some big names. Johnny Jackson was in there, and all that type of thing.
Some heavy hitters there.
What was that? Sorry.
Some pretty heavy hitters there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dennis's last show from memory.
He was his last one, or might have been his second.
Yeah.
It might have been his last one. And then, to be honest, that show, I reckon I probably came out the worst I've ever come out, to be honest. And I looked great coming into it. At that particular time, I was using a full ketogenic diet. I'd been on a keto diet for 12 months. I was training with Dave Palumbo. And I soon realised that things like ketogenic diets have their place, but they have a place, and we ran that right through. And if you have a look at the photos from my first show, which I absolutely hate, they're probably the worst stage photos I've got. I was watery and smooth, and then I had the Dallas show the following week, and I actually just went off what Dave had given me and did my own thing, and ended up coming in better, definitely better, but the damage already been done. So that was 2009. I sort of came back from that pretty disgruntled, to be honest, and going, this is just silly, and I spent a ridiculous amount of money. So I stepped away from the competing side of things for a while, and that's about the same time that we decided to move to Australia. So I did a bit of fighting, a bit of Muay Thai and stuff, which was really good. And then when I was in Australia, probably to try and help lift my profile in Australia, I decided to do the 2014 Australian Pro, which was the last year before it became the Arnold's. And that was a great show, and I really enjoyed that. And I really liked the way I looked in that show. And that was, we had, who did we have in that show? Geez, that was a real who's who. There was Sean Roden won it. Bonnet got second. Who got third? Evan Senapani. Branch Warren was in it. David Henry was in it. Josh Nadowitz was in it. So that was a big name. And look, I walked away at that show, I think, with 10th. When you talk 10th, 9th, there was a few people who thought I should have come in a place higher, but I really enjoyed that show. That was just an amazing show. I just had a blast, and I was so happy how I come out on stage after 5 years I've been off the stage.
Yeah.
I weighed in about on stage, I think I was about 101 kilos. So, I was very happy with that and in good shape.
Yeah.
And I said to Tony Doherty after, I said, I'm going to go to New Zealand, do Mo's 212 show. And he said, there is no way you're going to get under 212 from the weight you are at the moment. And yeah, I did. And that was the show that I ended up standing on stage with Jose Raymond and of course some of the guys from New Zealand. And I can't remember the guy that got second, actually was from Poland, I think. So yeah. So that was 2014. 2015 off, was about competing again, wasn't too sure. I came over to see Steve win the Nationals in 2015, and Mo cornered me and said, hey, we're doing a 212 pro show next year. I went home and said to the boss, oh, Mo's doing a 212 show. And she was like, the first thing she said to me was, oh, when do you start dieting? So I did the 212. I was very, very happy with the way I came out in that show. And I know that show had a bit of a, there was some heated discussion about the placings, that's for sure. First was definitely Jose Raymond. I ended up walking away with third, but there was a pretty good discussion on some of those placings.
Yeah.
And then that was 2016, and then 2017 I went and did the New York Pro, again 212, and the Toronto 212.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think Mike. I had a conversation with Mike about the Toronto one as well, and New York and some of the placings there, and felt you're a bit hard done by.
Look, it's the sort of sport that you you just have to roll with it. And look, behind closed doors, I've talked about some of my well, actually, no, I'll be really honest. It's probably only one of my placings that I've ever really been strong opinion of, but it was always behind closed doors.
Yeah.
I'm never going to discuss the results in public because it's disrespectful to the other athletes.
Yeah.
And I know how I looked at shows, and to be honest, for me, the placing, especially once I became a pro, was more about looking at those photos from last show to this show and did I get better?
Yeah.
I think predominantly I did. New York was a bit of a nightmare for me, but that was to do with the travel and so forth. But in general, I've been happy with my progression over my years as a pro. So
yeah,
I probably think my favourite look would have been the Australian Pro.
Yep.
Even though I wasn't probably my best conditioned.
Yep.
And then probably the two New Zealand 212 shows, condition-wise, I was pretty happy with those shows.
Yeah, cool. Hey, probably moving away from that, because you've had some amazing achievements here, and I just can't imagine sharing the stage with some of those people. Would just be my absolute dream, even if I was not even in contention, just to be backstage, and that's a massive experience there. But also, you've had some really amazing results with some of your athletes, and you've worked alongside or coached some. You've worked very closely with Mike. You've worked with Steve Orton, a whole host of amateurs. Do you want to sort of talk us through a bit about your coaching and your ethos behind your coaching? Yeah,
look, I think with the coaching, I take that. Coaching's a funny old thing, isn't it? Because sometimes things just work out so well, and other times you think things work out so well, but the athlete might not. And I've been really lucky. I think you can't create a silk purse out of a sow's ass. So, the reality is, you as a coach, you're given a piece of clay, and depending on what that piece of clay, how well it works, I suppose, but also what that piece of clay is what you've got to work with. Now, someone like Steve, I was just lucky enough that Steve sort of fell on my lap in 2008, and we have a connection, and we still have that connection, and we're still close, and we did some really good things in the start of his career. I took him through to his first overall Mr. New Zealand win in NABBA.
Yep.
And then I moved, and it was a little bit harder. A young Steve needed someone face to face.
Yep.
So I've worked with Steve. I worked with obviously with Mike Kingsnorth of recent, and we did some great things there. We got top 5 in a pro show, in a tough pro show. Yeah, in a Chicago pro show. Obviously, I was working with Kate there for an extended period of time, and I felt that we made some really good headway on her physique, and I think we presented a very fine-tuned, well-tuned athlete her pro debut as well. So
absolutely.
yes.
Kudos to both yourself and Kate, because that pro debut, and in Mike's words, is one of the best pro debuts that we've seen from a New Zealand athlete.
Yeah. I was very pleased, and when your feedback comes back from the judges that you're probably a bit too well conditioned, I would rather them say that than say you were too fat. So, and there was, it was very, very hands-on. Obviously, I travelled to America with those guys, so I made a bit of an investment as well to jump on a plane and travel to, I had to take 2 weeks away from work and my wife and so forth. And, I was very hands-on. I was doing, 4 check-ins a day with Kate. I'd check her first thing in the morning. I'd check her at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd check her at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd check her before she goes to bed. And I'd probably, and I checked Mike a lot more, because I'd wake up and he'd be standing half naked at the end of my bed saying, "What do you think? What do you think?"
That's my nightmare.
For God's sakes, Mike, just can I get up and have a piss first? So. And that was great. That was a really good experience, because Mike Kingsnorth has got a huge heart, and we're very, very, very good friends. And as much as he can talk the ears off a donkey, the guy's heart's in the right place.
Absolutely,
so,
great guy. Can't speak highly enough of him.
So I had good results with them. I had some really good results with a couple of with people in Australia as well. So I had a lot to do with some INBA athletes, which is very big in Queensland. So I walked away with a number of figure titles, bodybuilding titles with natural athletes in those federations. I trained a girl to WBFF Pro and the Fitness Diva. I trained another young fella, Andreas, to the under 80 Open Mr. Australia title a couple of years ago, and multitude of both regional champions, both their classes, some overall champions and stuff like that as well. So it's been really, really good. And I've had some good success working with some fighters as well in Australia, which is something that I do enjoy as well, because it's sort of a bit of an interest in that I've got as well.
Yeah, and that could be a really good area, because in New Zealand, what I've found is I sort of loosely follow, fighting and jiu-jitsu, etc. And a lot of those guys, while they're very, very well schooled in their actual martial art, the training that runs alongside it, there's not a lot of knowledge, probably outside of a couple of key people in the country. So I guess if there's people in Christchurch that are, into martial arts, etc., you'd be a good person to touch base with.
Yeah, look, I was doing some good strength and conditioning with some younger athletes and stuff like that, and then I ended up getting asked a lot to do people's cutting programs, which I think is an area that I think the old school fighters fall down on, because they have that number set on their weight, and that is all they think about. And performance is not really. They don't think too much about the performance. Just got to make that weight, and if they have to make the weight, because if they don't make the weight, they don't fight. But I think how you can do that, starting their cuts a little bit earlier, having them only a few pounds out from a fight weight, a week out, rather than So that's sort of an area that I do really enjoy working to, and we've had some really good success as well. So
the fighters do some fairly drastic water cuts, though. They're losing sort of 8 pounds or so in a couple of days.
Yeah, and I think the ones that I've worked with, when I've put them on the plans that I've sort of just put together for them, sometimes they're a bit like, because it's a little bit foreign to what they've done before, Mike, we've got weigh-in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you've got me the previous day still drinking 5 litres of fluid, and they get a bit shocked when you can show them how quickly you can adjust their water levels and their weight with manipulation, not just basically drying them out and throwing them in saunas and so forth. And generally when I've done that, the fighters come away going they've felt better than they've ever felt before walking into the ring. So
some of the old school sort of cuts that they do and the drastic drops, you must sort of feel like a bag of arseholes by the time you hit the, and you
yeah, absolutely.
perform at your 100%. So
yeah, absolutely. And look, I've been very fortunate as well, because I've been involved with my Muay Thai coach back in Christchurch. The guy's 7 times heavyweight champion. He's trained people with people like David Tua. His school has a lot to do with a lot of the top MMA fighters here in New Zealand at the moment. And there's some people that he's involved with, and I've got a friend of mine, Sue Gully, and she was one of the highest paramedic. When you talk about paramedics, she was at the highest level of paramedics in New Zealand. And she has a strong interest in doing that, and she's doing some PhD work, and she's a good friend of mine and a client of mine. So we were able to backwards and forwards. And one of the other people that I became very good friends with while I was in Australia was the head dietitian for the Wallabies back a few years ago. He works with a lot of Olympic athletes. He competed himself and actually got me to do his last 6 weeks. But he's a PhD in dietetics and is a head lecturer at the University of the Sunshine Coast. So I got to learn a lot about those sort of people. So not just the bro science, actually got to learn a bit more of the actual science behind it. So who knows? That's also an area that I'm being very interested in diving deeper into. It's very hard as a Kiwi to study in in Australia. So who knows? When I get back here, I'll have a look, and I would like to have a little bit more. I'd like to have a lot more, to be honest, of that that sort of training behind me.
Yeah.
Dr. Debenham when you get your PhD.
Who knows? Who knows? I don't think I'm that bright.
You know about hard work, though.
Yeah. Hey, look, Mike, just on that topic, if athletes want to get in contact with you, because you're going to be touching down in Christchurch, do you know where you're going to be based or anything at this point?
No, look, at this point, I really don't. The dynamics of the Christchurch fitness industry has changed quite considerably since I left in 2011. There's a lot of gyms down there. A lot of my bodybuilding stuff, I don't really need to be at a gym for, because the real honesty, in my opinion, is if I've got a bodybuilder who's going to be a good bodybuilder,
yeah,
they should know how to train. I don't need to lean over them. Maybe the odd session here and there, but the reality is it's the IP, it's the diet, it's maybe the training structure, all those types of things. And that I can do from wherever. But look, I will be basing myself somewhere. I'm just not really 100% sure. I'll get down to Christchurch. I'll go visit a few gyms. I've got a few appointments. I've had some fantastic offers from some friends about going and working in their gym. I've just got to make sure that the gym I do base myself out is going to be appropriate for my needs.
Yeah. And what would be the best way of athletes getting in contact with you if they wanted to?
Probably just via Facebook or Instagram. Mike D Fitness and Contest Prep, or just Mike Debenham on Facebook is probably the easiest way.
Should we have a bit of a look at your Instagram anyway while we're talking Instagram?
Okay.
I can bring that up. Bear with me.